By the late 4th century, the Western Roman Empire had become a fragile remnant of its former glory. Centuries of expansion had overextended its resources, while internal corruption and external threats steadily weakened its core. The grandeur of the Roman name still commanded fear and respect, but the reality on the ground told a different story. Once strong cities were deteriorating. Roads went unrepaired. Armies were underpaid and undertrained. The state that had dominated the ancient world for over 500 years was now stretched thin, politically unstable, economically crippled, and increasingly reliant on the loyalty of foreign mercenaries rather than its own citizens. In contrast, the Eastern Roman Empire, known later as the Byzantine Empire, remained relatively stable. With its capital in Constantinople, it enjoyed a stronger economy, a denser population, and a more defensible geographic position. The West, however, was a land of fading influence. Wealthy provinces like North Africa and Egypt had either slipped from control or become contested. The Western Empire lacked the means to fund its military, and what soldiers it had were often Germans, Goths, or Huns, men loyal to their own leaders, not to Rome. The once elite Roman legions had become fragmented, and the idea of citizenship had lost its meaning. Another transformation reshaped the empire from within: religion. When Constantine legalized Christianity in the early 4th century, it altered more than worship. It changed the fabric of Roman society. Pagan temples were gradually abandoned or destroyed. Bishops rose in influence, sometimes eclipsing local governors. The emperor, once seen as a semi-divine figure in Roman tradition, was now expected to be a protector of the church. While this gave the empire a new unifying faith, it also redirected loyalty from state to spiritual institutions, subtly eroding the traditional pillars of Roman political unity. At the same time, the empire's frontiers were under enormous pressure. From the steppes of Central Asia came the Huns, a nomadic people whose swift cavalry raids destabilized entire regions. As they moved westward, they displaced other tribes such as the Goths, Vandals, and Alans. Seeking refuge, the Visigoths pleaded for entry into Roman territory. Their request was granted, but once inside, they were mistreated and exploited by corrupt Roman officials. Desperation turned to revolt, and in 378 CE, the Visigoths clashed with Roman forces at the Battle of Adrianople. The Roman army was obliterated. Emperor Valens was killed. It was a military catastrophe that shattered the myth of Roman invincibility. After Adrianople, the empire could no longer pretend it controlled its borders. The Visigoths remained within Roman lands as a semi-autonomous force, technically allies but effectively independent. This became the new norm. Rome didn't so much repel invaders as accommodate them. It handed over land, titles, and legal status in exchange for peace. The Western Empire, once centralized and authoritative, now resembled a fractured alliance of regional powers, some Roman, many not. It was no longer clear who was defending the empire and who was simply carving out their own kingdoms within it. In 410 CE, the unimaginable happened. The Visigoths, now led by King Alaric, marched on Rome and breached its gates. For the first time in 8 centuries, the Eternal City was sacked. Although the damage was selective, churches were spared and large-scale destruction was avoided, the psychological blow was immense. Rome had long been a symbol of order, strength, and divine favor. Its fall shattered the illusion of imperial permanence. Across the Mediterranean world, people were stunned. Rome had been unthinkable without power. Now, it had fallen. Yet remarkably, the empire did not immediately collapse. It limped on, sustained by inertia, tradition, and whatever legitimacy could be salvaged. But each passing decade chipped away at its foundation. Emperors came and went, many little more than puppets. Some were installed by generals, others assassinated after brief reigns. The Senate still convened, but it no longer held real power. The administration of the empire became increasingly militarized, and real authority often lay in the hands of commanders, many of whom were not even Roman by birth. One such figure was Flavius Aetius, often called the last of the Romans. Born to a Roman mother and a Scythian father, Aetius spent his youth as a hostage among the Huns, learning their language, culture, and tactics. This experience would prove vital. In 451 CE, when Attila the Hun invaded Gaul, it was Aetius who organized a coalition of Romans, Visigoths, and other tribes to stop him. The resulting clash, known as the Battle of the Catalonian Plains, was one of the largest and bloodiest battles of the ancient world. It did not destroy the Huns, but it halted their advance. Aetius was hailed as a hero, but his reward was betrayal. He was assassinated by Emperor Valentinian III just a few years later. In 455 CE, only a few years after Aetius's death, disaster struck again. The Vandals, who had crossed into North Africa decades earlier, now possessed a navy and launched raids on the Italian coast. They sailed to Rome and captured it with almost no resistance. For 2 weeks, they looted the city. Unlike the Visigoths, the Vandals took everything. Treasures, art, even people were carted away to Carthage. Though the term vandalism would arise centuries later, this sack left an impression of destruction and violation that echoed across Europe. By now, the Western Roman Empire was a ghost of its former self. Its borders had shrunk dramatically. Britain had been abandoned. Spain and Gaul were divided among various tribal kingdoms. North Africa was lost. Italy itself was unstable, its cities declining in population and influence. The emperors who sat on the throne in Ravenna or Milan were figureheads. They issued decrees and minted coins, but it was the generals, especially Germanic ones, who truly ruled. The idea of a unified Western Roman state had become fiction. In 476 CE, the end finally came. A Germanic warlord named Odoacer deposed Romulus Augustulus, a teenage emperor with no army, no wealth, and no support. Odoacer did not claim the title of emperor for himself. Instead, he sent the imperial insignia to Constantinople, recognizing the Eastern emperor as the sole Roman ruler. This act, seemingly administrative, marked the symbolic end of the Western Roman Empire. It was not a blaze of glory, but a quiet handover, a resignation to reality. And yet, Rome didn't truly fall. Its laws, institutions, and culture persisted, adapted by the very people who had once been its enemies. Odoacer ruled Italy not as a barbarian conqueror, but as a Roman-style king. He preserved many of Rome's traditions, relied on its bureaucrats, and respected the church. The idea of Rome remained potent, even as the political entity crumbled. People still saw themselves as Romans, spoke Latin, and believed in the continuity of Roman civilization. Meanwhile, in the East, the Roman Empire endured. From Constantinople, emperors governed a vast realm that included the Balkans, Anatolia, Syria, and Egypt. Though historians now call it the Byzantine Empire, its people never stopped calling themselves Romans. They maintained Roman law, minted Roman coins, and fought under Roman banners. Culturally Greek and religiously Christian, the Eastern Empire became a bridge between antiquity and the Middle Ages, surviving for another 1,000 years after the fall of the West. The legacy of Rome proved to be more durable than its borders. Roman architecture, from aqueducts to amphitheaters, continued to shape cityscapes across Europe. Roman engineering inspired generations of builders. Latin, though it evolved, gave birth to the Romance languages. Roman law became the foundation of legal systems in many nations. Even the concept of a senate or a republic would influence governments long after the empire's collapse. Throughout the Middle Ages, leaders sought to revive Rome's image and authority. Charlemagne, crowned emperor by the Pope in 800 CE, claimed to be the heir of Caesar and Augustus. The Holy Roman Empire, though a patchwork of medieval kingdoms, borrowed Roman titles and rituals. The Catholic Church, based in Rome, inherited much of the city's spiritual prestige. Rome remained an idea, as eternal as the myths that had once founded it. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was not a sudden event, but a long process marked by economic decline, military collapse, and political fragmentation. It was a story of transformation rather than total destruction. The world didn't end in 476, it changed. New kingdoms rose from the ashes, new cultures emerged, but the imprint of Rome was indelible. Even as cities burned and emperors died, the Roman mind, the idea of order, structure, and legacy, survived. Historians have long debated when and why Rome fell. Was it the corruption of the elite? The burden of maintaining too vast an empire? The moral decay of its citizens? The arrival of Christianity? Or simply the inevitability of all empires to rise and fall? The answer, perhaps, is all of these and none of them. Rome fell not just because of what happened, but because of what it could no longer become. And yet the story of Rome didn't end with its empire. It lived on in law, in language, in religion, and in identity. The Roman legacy became part of the Western imagination. Writers, architects, leaders, and revolutionaries drew from its example. Rome became the yardstick by which all other civilizations would be measured. Even today, the idea of Rome persists in architecture, in politics, in the very words we speak. Echoes of Rome surround us. Its emperors, battles, philosophies, and myths remain subjects of fascination. In many ways, Rome never truly fell. It evolved, leaving behind a world forever shaped by its hand. This was the end of the Western Roman Empire, but not the end of Rome, not by a long shot. In the centuries to come, kings would wear its titles, popes would claim its authority, and nations would rise built on its bones. Rome, once the ruler of the known world, became its most powerful ghost, haunting history with every column that stands and every law that endures. Enjoying the journey through history? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community of history enthusiasts. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Tell us what you think, share your favorite historical insights, or suggest a topic you'd love to see us explore. And if you know someone who would love diving into the past, share this video with them. Let's uncover history together.